just imagine if a person has a company with many, many workers and he's making a little bit of a cheshbon hanefesh where he's holding the finances v'chulei, and he's looking specifically at two workers to see whether he needs them or maybe one of them that he needs. So he makes a little bit of a cheshbon and he sees that they're both doing an amazing job. Both of them are doing really, really good work for the company. They're doing great. They're loyal. It's kavalnik. But the problem is he needs to get rid of one of them because the company's losing money. They don't need it, whatever. So he makes the following cheshbon. They're both doing great for the company. They're both doing amazing. They're both very loyal. They're both, doing what they need to be doing. Both of them. But he noticed that one of them stays a little bit after the time when they can theoretically leave. In other words, they're allowed to leave at, let's say, 5 o'clock. This guy stays till around 5:10. Not doing anything. He's not even doing any work in that time. He's not making any money for the company. He's pushed there just to make sure the office is, in order and lights are off. And he's just there for a few minutes longer. So even though both of them are doing great for the company, if you have to keep one of them, which one as a boss would you keep? Mistama, you would keep the one that stays a bit longer because it shows his dedication. It shows his love for the company. It shows that he's there a little bit longer because he wants to just make sure it's really good. I want to use this, if you don't mind, as a way to bring in the halacha that we're going to be discussing Be'ez Hashem today, and specifically the next few days as well, going into next week Be'ez Hashem. Halacha which is a very simple halacha. It's halacha that everyone Be'ez Hashem keeps, but it's halacha that many people don't know the details of. And over here we like to discuss the details. We like to understand what's going on. We like to keep everything in the proper way, to understand many of these sodas that are sometimes behind the halacha as well. The Ben Ish Chai, the Heilige Ben Ish Chai, at the beginning of Parshas Vayetze, explains that everything that has kedusha to it requires an hosofa, requires an addition, requires more to be added to it. And included in this inyan is the idea of being moisif michoil ala kodesh. That means that when Shabbos goes out, we're not to rush Shabbos going out. We're not to be excited that Shabbos is over, but rather take it with ease. To be moisif choil on the kodesh. That means to take a little bit of the weekday and put it over. Now we know there's a mitzvah called Tosefes Shabbos, which we're not really talking about. But there's a mitzvah d'oraisa, to accept Shabbos early and to have Shabbos end later. It could be a mashu, it could be a minute or two, says the Aruch HaShulchan. But you know what it shows? It shows the dedication. It shows that Shabbos is not something that is annoying, is burden. It's something that I want a bit more of Kedusha. So the Ben Ish Chai, everything with Kedusha requires a hisofa. Without going into the details when Shabbos ends in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, Me'ika Hadin, 3 small stars, look at the calendar, look at your minhagim, whatever you keep, 40, 50, 60, 72. I'm not going now into the sugya of when you should finish Shabbos. But all I'm saying, the idea is to delay the Shabbos finishing. For example, Shulchan Aruch tells us halacha that many of us probably noticed, but didn't realize it's a real halacha, Dovi. It's a real halacha that we have to know. And the halacha goes like this, that the Torah and the Ramah in Siman Reish Tzadi Hey brings down that we should try to delay Shabbos going out. Why? Says the Torah and the Ramah, when do the neshamas go back to Gehenna? They're not there during Shabbos Kodesh. So when do they return to Gehenna? They return to Gehenna after V'inoyam, after the Kedusha, Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. And the longer you delay Mariv, and the delaying of V'inoyam, is the delaying of them going back into Gehenna. Which is why it's important, and says the El Yorabah, and he brings the Roikeach. The El Yorabah brings the Roikeach, that's why people have a minig, Mistoma the Olam have seen this, right? Where's that come from? Right? It's not like a nice thing that people do. We do it, we don't do it. Rabbi said that El Yorabah Sikotan Aleph over here in Reish Sadi Gimel brings a Rokeach that says we should say along Virachim. Dafka say along Virachim. Says the Ramon, he brings at the end of Reish Sadi Gimel, that means we should say it slowly. because you're not trying to rush Shabbos leaving. Listen to Rabbi say the words of the Sharet Tshuva. The Sharet Tshuva brings down that when a person says a long and extended V'urachim by Ma'ariv Motzei Shabbos, Zuk the Sharet Tshuva, it's a skula for Hatzlacha the entire week, and no harm will befall such a person. Sharet Tshuva brings it in Shulchan Aruch Reish Study Gimel. Look it up. It's an unbelievable skula, Rabbi say. Brand new skula. You heard it here first. Okay? Saying a long and extended V'urachim by Ma'ariv Motzei Shabbos does an amazing thing. In fact, the post can bring, even if the Chazan doesn't do it, you should do it. It's not totally in the Chazan. You should do it yourself as well. Tosfos Shabbos is an inyan of adding a little bit as well. And as long as you don't say Baruch HaMavdil or do any malacha, you still have the Kedusha of Shabbos. The Kedusha of Shabbos is still with you. The Pri Megadim in the Mishpah Soisav in the beginning of Reish Sadi Gimel brings down the reason why we do this is because we want to show that Shabbos is not a masoi. It's not a burden on us. Let's get rid of it. When is Shabbos finishing? I don't want to show it's a burden. It's geschmack. We're learning Shabbos with the Olam now. Shabbos is the time that we spend with the Rabbeinu Shalom. You want to get rid of that? Havdala. A person goes back bein manim. He hasn't been back for a whole year, half a year, whatever it is. His parents are so excited. Yankala, you're coming back for bein manim. We're going to spend bein manim together. It's going to be gavaldik. And you're constantly desperate. When is yeshiva starting again? When does the Zman begin? You know those guys. Maybe I can't wait for bein manim. I have a calendar, with the cross next day. 72 days till I get to go home. Gavaldik. How is it that about 2 days after the Olam goes back, I get a bunch of messages from the Olam Rebbe? I am so excited for yeshiva to begin again. Happens every single time. Every single time. So the idea is that we don't want to show. Imagine how your parents would feel if you're so desperate to leave. Come on, I want to spend time with you. The Rabbeinu Shalom wants to spend time with us on Shabbos Kodesh, and we should want to reciprocate that and spend time with him. By rushing out of Shabbos, says the Pri Megadim, we are showing Shabbos is a masoi. It's a burden, and we don't do it. There is a Moedika Arvei Nachal. The Arvei Nachal is the Parshas Kiseitzei. The Arvei Nachal brings down, and you could see, by the way, sometimes you could see when people are writing, they're screaming. The Arvei Nachal is screaming over here. Parshas Kiseitzei. He's poshet screaming at the people that have no patience, and they're looking to when will Shabbos end. They're looking at the clock, they're looking at the calendar, the Zmanim. When is Shabbos going to end? Zog the Arvei Nachal, that's a bizoyan to Shabbos. Poshet a bizoyan to Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos is with us, we're spending time with Hashem. We're command in the Beis HaMikdash, zusammen with the Rabbeinu Shalom. And when's it finishing again? When is Shabbos out? So the Arvei Nachal, it's a bizoyan to Shabbos Kodesh. Okay? And that's why it's important for a person to remember when Shabbos goes out. Yes, it goes out, but we should try to delay it, even if it's 1 minute, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can manage. Showing the Rabbeinu Shalom your loyalty, showing the Rabbeinu Shalom that you want to spend time with him. And now we move on. We move on to a subject that I want to spend a few days on because I think it's an important subject. It's a subject that we all know and we all keep, but the intricate details and the skulas behind what's going on we often don't know. I want to read you the Torah in Siman Reish Tzadivov. The Torah brings a Pirkei Rebbe Elazar. The Torah brings a Pirkei Rebbe Elazar. Listen to the Lashon and I quote: Hamavdil ala yayin, someone that makes Havdala on wine. Oy hayshomeya ma'acherim. Or he hears from other people, Shemavdilim. Listen to this. Rabbi says it's a Torah b'shem the Pirkei Rebbe Elazar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Koyro Kadosh. The Rabbeinu Shalom calls him Kadosh, he calls him holy. Vasu Skula Shenema v'Isim li Segula Mikol Ha'amim v'Oima v'Havdala Schem min Ha'amim. By us making Havdala or listening to Havdala from somebody else on a Motzei Shabbos, the Rabbeinu Shalom calls you Kadosh and says, this is my nation. This is the nation that I chose. That's Gavaldik. So Rabbi say Havdala is a very, very important chilek of Shabbos going out. Be'ez Hashem, I want to spend a few days on understanding the halachas and the inyonim that are attached to Havdala, because I think it's something that we can all be machazik ourselves into to know the details. So we know that just as something Kodesh at the beginning of Shabbos requires to be Mekadesh the Yom, we've been learning Hilchos Kiddush, so too Havdala at the end of Shabbos shows specifically, demonstrates that is finished. Where's the Makar? Where does Havdalah come from? So there is a Rambam. There's a Rambam. The Rambam in the beginning of Perek Chavtes and Hilchos Shabbos tells us, and he brings the pasuk, Zochor es yoim hashabbos lekadshay. Says the Rambam, we have a mitzvah asay min haTorah. Zog the Rambam, to remember Shabbos when it begins, Zog the Rambam, and also when it finishes b'Havdalah. So that means the Fi Shitas HaRambam, Havdalah is a mitzvah asay min haTorah. And as I paskin lemaisa the chinuch, the smag, the shita mukubetzes and beitza the Havdalah doman aleph, that Havdalah Motzei Shabbos is a mitzvah asay daraisa. The Rav Magid and others, Orchos Chaim, Tshuvas Arosh and others hold it only the Rabbanon, whatever. We're not going to go now how they learn that way, but that's the Metzias. But everybody holds that what? That Minat Torah, a person has to be Yotz, can be Yotz Havdalah, Zuk the Mishnah Berurah, Meis Tzadivov in the beginning, Sikot and Aleph, Tshuvas Chasam Sofer as well. When you say Baruch HaMavdam Bein Kodesh L'chol, you have been Yotze, which means, according to the Mishnah Berurah, that's clear, that when you daven Shmoneh Esrei and you say Atachin and Tonu, which will do, whatever, we'll understand how that comes in. You've been Yotze Yochiev Daraisa, and now you have a D'Rabbanan ala Kois. Okay? What? Oh, so the Maisa, let's understand like this. There's a Gemara in Brochas. The Gemara in Brochas that the Olim have to know. The Gemara in Brochas Lamed Gimel on Aleph says like this. Let's understand where Havdalah came from. Says the Gemara in Brochas Lamed Gimel. Originally, when Ezra brought the Yidden back from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, the Gemara, Klal Yisrael were very poor. They couldn't afford wine. It wasn't a gaya to them to have wine, to have grape juice. It was very, very hard for them. So it tells us the Gemara, what happened was the Anshe Knesset Gedolah came along and said, you know something? You don't need a kais, you don't need wine, you don't need grape juice. So the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, you can make it in Shmoneh Esrei. We'll make a specific Havdalah in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, and that's what we do. Later on explains the Gemara, when Klal Yisrael had a bit more money and they were able to afford a bit more, so then they were misaken that you should now make Havdalah on a kos of yain or a kos of grape juice, which is what we do. When should we say Zug de Be'alacha? You should say it after Mariv. Why? Mariv comes more often, Havdalah comes once a week. But mainly you make Havdalah after Mariv, even though there is a Shita B'Shas Tzchak, the Havdalah can be made by Plaga Mincha. Mishnah Berurah says you shouldn't do it. It's problematic. Right? You make it after Mariv, that's how it is. The latest time to make Havdalah is 3 days, as we know, after 3 days after Shabbos, which by the way means that we omit the Ner and Besabim, that's only Motzei Shabbos. And by the way, 3 days only applies to Shabbos, not to Yontov. Yontov, you only have 1 day, you don't have 3 days. It's a din of Shabbos. Now, saying Havdalah in davening is also interesting, and there's an interesting question that I'm not sure many people know. Havdalah in Tefillah is said in Atachin and Tanu. It's in Atachinin, right? Is the idea to be Mavdil, because to be Mavdil, to separate, we have to have Das. So it's Dafka said in the Bracha of Shmoneh Esrei that there is Das. And it's also interesting as well, is we say the Havdalah in Shmoneh Esrei Motzei Shabbos right before the personal requests. Why? Because you're not allowed to ask for anything personal on Shabbos Kodesh. Mimele, you make the Havdalah in Shmoneh Esrei, now it's Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos, I can ask for requests, right, Ruvain? Now I can daven for all the requests I want on Motzei Shabbos and Shmoneh Esrei. I don't know how many people knew that was the cheshbon of why we specifically make Havdalah at that time over there. The Mishnah Berurah brings this very, very simple. And even if a person hears Havdalah before Mariv, he heard Havdalah and he went to daven Mariv later, he still says Atachin and Tonu in Shmoneh Esrei. Why? Because it's two separate mitzvahs. That's what it is. By the way, if you leave Atachin and Tonu in Shmoneh Esrei, you do not repeat Shmoneh Esrei. But here's a quiz. Here's a quiz question for you, Tully. When does eating, should I say better, when does eating require that you have to repeat Shmoneh Esrei? When does eating require that you have to repeat Shmoneh Esrei? Right? Who? No?
When you eat during Shmoneh Esrei.
When you eat during Shmoneh Esrei. Nice. A simple idea is if you forget Atachin and Tonu and Shmoneh Esrei Motzei Shabbos and you eat before hearing Havdalah. If you hear Havdalah after, it's good. But if you eat after Mariv and you didn't hear Havdalah Lakais, you have to repeat Shmoneh Esrei again. Okay? That's a gewaltige Sache. It's a knas. It's a knas. Okay? And a chanami, so you have the same problem. Oh no, you have Havdala Lakois. Obviously. Okay, Rabbi say, we have to let me just do one last thing, if you don't mind. One last thing. I want to understand the Seder of Havdala and what's Ma'akev. Right, I've had guys that were inside, oh my gosh, they start Havdala, they run out. If they miss part of Havdala, are you still Yotze Havdala? Do you have to hear the whole thing, or which parts do you have to hear? So let's do very quickly. The Seder of Havdala is Yayin, Besomim, Ner, and Havdala. Why is it that way? If you want to look, Al Pi Kabbalah, the reason is because taste is something you only recognize when you actually put it to your mouth, when you taste it. Whereas smell is something you recognize from further away, when it's not touching you, when it's by your nose. And fire, the sight, is something you can see from far away. So therefore, we go specifically in that order, Yayin, Besomim, Ner, and Havdala. Says the Mat Yehuda B'Shem Narash Bates that the Havdala is the Chochmah to differentiate between weekday and Shabbos, and the Seichel is most sensitive of all functions of the body, and that's the Seder of a person's head. That you start with taste, that goes over here with your mouth, smell is of the nose, and then you go with the re'iyah of the sight. The Ben Ish Chai discussed this in many different situations, by the way. That's why the fire is after there. Now there are three parts to Havdala. There's Hinei Kel Yeshuasi, which is not really part of Havdala. It refers to how the Rabbeinu Shalom brings Yeshua and helps people and financial requirements. And it brings, by the way, saying this bracha to the week. If you miss this, you're okay. Then you've got Hagofen, which is also not part of Havdala. It's just a technical problem that you have to make Havdala ala kois, and to make ala kois means you have to make a bracha on the kois, but it's not part of Havdala, which means if you miss Hagofen, you're okay. And then you've got the bracha of actual Havdala at the end, that Havdala is Ma'akiv, every word is Ma'akiv. In Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow, Be'ezras Hashem, we shall continue with the halachas.